Hello everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations, and you're with Simon today. And in today's video, I'm going to look at something that I find really interesting, but I also noticed seemed to have some value potentially to your lives and to my own, I definitely know. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about digesting your soul's reality, right? I love this picture so much. It really captures the intensity of this dialogue that I want to have with you today. It captures the essence of the level of intensity that we as a human race are experiencing at the moment, with so much deep information arising from the unknown, if you want to use that type of language. If you want to use something more like mythological works, like the underworld, essentially the non-physical reality and what is arising into our collective awareness from that place, right? So the undigested chaos that is the divine feminine, in a sense. No negative association with that there. So the sea of awareness as it moves into our physical awareness and how we actually make sense of that. That would be kind of the topic of conversation today. And we're clearly becoming a lot more sensitive to the veil between our ability to make sense of the physical world and that place that exists outside our feelings of safety and what we consider to be the boundaries, right? So this, like I said, this raw data, this unprocessed material that's existing just on the other side of it. And so that's why this picture really speaks to me in such a profound way, because there's just so many multidimensional facets all at once, and we're on this road, like this little person that's walking on this. Let me just get the little highlighter over there for you. So if you look over here, you can see it. There's the person. Let me just see there. We can see the person running on this thread. And on some level, that's actually what it feels like. We've got this physical vessel, this physical body, and it's moving through reality, or reality is moving through us, however you choose to experience it. And we're digesting large quantities of data through our cognitive function, right? So on one level, you can look at that we all have this perception of life, and that perception is defined based on our view or belief system. Okay, so we have a system in place that helps us digest the vastness of reality. So in astrology, the archetype of Pisces is reflected as the totality of everything in its non-dual state. Okay, and then the Sagittarius archetype, which naturally in the natural zodiac, which I have available to us, and I'll show you, it squares that. So there's a tension between the totality of everything and our capacity to digest the totality of everything in a subjective way. So Sagittarius meaning, what is our personal take on the collective vastness that is reality, right? And so Sagittarius functions as a capacity to open us up to an aspect of truth and allow us to digest what is there. And depending on the level in which your brain can process and make sense of undiffused reality or unprocessed or raw reality, will essentially dictate, one, your capacity to make sense of it, two, your insanity or sanity, which in this case is seemingly so intense at the moment. It's very easy to actually go insane in a world that is just filled with so much chaos at the moment, as everything kind of returns to a point of origin in this kind of collapsing old paradigm of worldview, as it were. And that's why things like religion, for instance, is a manifestation in people's lives, because at this level, and I'm going to back up here for a second and talk about something that I think is important before I move on to talking about religion and stuff and its manifestation, is that if you just sit with this picture for a second and feel the intensity of so much things occurring and the blurriness and it can really, really feel like that consistency. And so we have this buffer, right? This perception, this visual cortex that we have, our eyes, our senses. And we're consistently taking in reality. We're consistently taking in large chunks of data. And if you look at your astrology chart as an example, the astrology wheel can hold a space to process specific aspects of data that you and your soul have come to work through in this brief experience of lifetime, right? So however long it is that you're going to be in your form for this trip is, in a sense, the reflection of the soul's journey. So what you're going to process, what have you come here to process? What have you come here to digest? And the capacity to digest something is linked with your ability to see the vastness that there is. Okay, your digesting capacity is directly linked with your ability to see what there is. So an example that's super clear is like this. And I'll show you how technology has revealed this, right, in terms of the cameras that we have. So here you have a juice mixer, okay? And you paid, say, $25 for the juice mixer. And this juice mixer is made of certain plastics and certain quality that is not really good, but it's a juice mixer, right? Now, you purchase it, but what you're going to use it for is the ability to process, say, 150 oranges and 150 bananas and 150 apples for the shop that you own that sells juices to people. Now, think about the amount of times you're going to use that motor. Think about the amount of times that you're going to process those fruits. Now, at some point, the capacity to handle that load in what you're going to subject this juicer to is going to put strain on it, and eventually its longevity or its lifespan is going to not, it's going to come up, right? And so just by understanding that, you can begin to see that if you're somebody that's just going to process 2 bananas and an apple a week versus somebody that owns a shop that's actively making a living from selling people juices and that is processing 150 bananas, et cetera, well, then the conclusion you would come to is if you're going to be doing that, then investing in juicer that has a larger, more durable, structured motor, has a lot stronger features, that's made of a lot more quality, etc., well, then that becomes a far better option. It's more logical to do that, right? Because the ability to handle the stress is stronger, and so because of that stronger, what you are putting out is also going to be far greater. Okay. So now let's take this experience as well. In the world right now, we have people that have the capacity to that have, okay, let me do this instead, right? So you have 2 cameras, okay? Or let's take this an example. If you had to choose between watching a really good TV show in 360 megapixels, or watch the TV show in 2000 or 2K HD, what are you going to choose, right? Now, apart from the 1 or 2 people that seem to have a deep need for rebellion, your choice is always going to be, well, I would want to watch the TV show I really enjoy watching in high density pixel oriented screen because, well, firstly, it looks cooler. It's very clear. I can make sense of things. I enjoy the detail. And in a sense, you know, like, why would I want to watch something that's blurry? Because if that was the truth, then none of us would be, in a sense, watching things on our phones or on our computer screens in less than that if we had the choice. It's just not an action, right, for the vast majority of us. So we're obviously prone to choosing high quality visualization over lesser density. But at the same time, this also relates to the fact that in order to see deeper perceptions of reality, we need to have a more sophisticated or advanced processing tool, right? Our cognitive awareness needs to be, in a sense, sharpened, all right? And for the nature of the evolving visual cortex, this may be something that's available to all of us, or it may not. My personal subjective view on this is that it is available to us. It's just that we haven't sharpened it enough for us to be able to see it. And so therefore, through that experience, it's underdeveloped. But I feel like all of us have the capacity to a certain degree to experience an upgrade from what would essentially be fundamentally the generic structure of a person's psychological and emotional dynamics. And this is where a growth comes from, the capacity to choose to continue sharpening your senses so that the degree of what you perceive reality to be can be sharper, right? Can be clearer, can be more coherent. That's really what I'm getting to here. And like I said, people vary. And so the capacity to digest an experience. So here's where Uranus in the birth chart will reflect the nature of trauma, in the sense that when we have an event happen to us, like Pluto conjunct the moon, or Pluto square the moon, or Pluto on the 12th house or the 11th house, or Uranus hitting your Mercury or Mars, and events happen in our lives, especially outer planets, because they exist beyond the realm of Saturn, then what's going to happen is that we're going to interface with raw, unprocessed data, and it's going to interface with our capacity to process that data. And if we're sitting with a cognitive function that is only able to process in 360, then what we're going to be able to digest is a 360 scope of something that's far greater. And so that's where things like, for instance, a solar eclipse experience that we're experiencing the 2nd of July, or events in our lives that seemingly are intense, is if we try to figure it out in the moment, we are limiting ourselves in the way that we can truly understand the meaning of it. Because even if we had sharpened sense of awarenesses, right, and we're doing this, the level of raw data that's coming through into our ego self is so profound that we're going to, on some level, only digest bite sizes of it, which leads us to that sense of disorientation, or that sense of confusion, or on most cases, pain or suffering, or why is this happening? And so naturally in this process, things like religion, as an example, materialize within the human psyche, because when you've got people that are digesting and experiencing reality that can only conceptualize it in simplicity, because the truth of it is reality is profoundly complex. It's not like, and I think that this is probably the main message in this conversation today, and my mission for offering the value is, the next time you try to or you're trying to digest a really big experience in your life, give yourself space to know that whatever it is that you're dealing with is far more greater than what the moment can even bring you. And so allow yourself the softness and the flexibility to feel into the experiences over time, and that's allowing your cognitive perception to slowly digest the nature of reality, which to a certain degree, unfortunately at this point in time, can be very difficult for us because, well, first, the acceleration of reality is so intense at the moment that I think that when we do actually interact with it, it becomes so incredibly overwhelming that we spin out, and we deal with a tremendous amount of sort of lostness and hopelessness and apathy, and that then just becomes a reoccurring cycle of giving up and dissolving into the polarity of digesting reality, which is in essence the Pisces archetype of disassociation, right? We're just in la la land, needing to, in a sense, soothe the realization of such intense raw data present with us all the time, and what to do with that as human beings. So that's why the value in this conversation that I'm trying to bring across is willing to recognize that during this time, one of the most important things to do is just give yourself enough space to not be judgmental on yourself, and to just deal with what you can deal with, and allow yourself to deal with that and process through that, and find somebody that you really, 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 really are able to feel safe with, and share the complexity of what you're dealing with, so that you can move through these large outpourings and burstings of material that are coming into your psyche that potentially could actually lead you into states of depression and states of confusion and lostness, and then apathy, and then giving up and saying, I don't give a shit anymore, as an example. And again, it doesn't mean that we don't give a shit anymore. It's more along the lines of, why do I care? It's too much. So emotional regulation, excessive technological use, and then it just becomes layers of emotional unprocessed reality, and the ego's need to soothe itself during intense periods of mutation. So this video is here to help with a practical relationship to yourself that says, look, fact, there is a tremendous amount of material swirling around us at the moment that is really, really complex to process. Take climate change, for instance. I'm going to be trigger warning coming in, right? Unless you actively interact with things on a daily basis that has to do with climate change, all right, or the nature of this phenomena that's occurring in our reality at the moment in time, okay, unless it is you're actively in, like you actively participate in the measurements of it, you actively participate in the understandings of it at a really core level, which I think for most of us, we're not doing that because we're not in that field. It's too big for us to process. It's too big for us to comprehend. So let's accept that. Let's accept that what it is that we're busy becoming aware of is so incredibly vast in our perceptions that it's a lot easier to search for safety at an ego level and security in things of the known than to feel comfortable going, we don't actually know. And even though we pretend that we have a sense of what this means for us, the ability to actually feel that this is absolutely certain, that this is what it is, to me seems dangerous, not because of the inability to acknowledge it, but the ability to believe that we know the totality of the experience in a way in which we've only sort of been exposed to it for the brief period of time that we've been exposed to it, right? It hasn't been something that we've been dealing with for 150 years as a collective thing. It's so new to us that we can prematurely judge the perception of what we see and forget about the deeper underlying components that are, in a sense, working here. Like, for instance, you can see that there's a clear polarity shift between people that believe in climate change and people that don't. And my question to you as a human being in this context is, why is there such a duality? Why does there seem to be that way? What is causing that thing there? And some of us might even jump to the conclusion of, well, this is why it is the case, and give your opinions. And fair enough to you if you spend time really investigating it. But to me, I think it reflects a deeper underlying sense of what is occurring as a human race. It reveals to us who we are. There clearly are people in the world that are more prone to seeing things from one perspective, and there clearly are people that are prone to seeing things from another perspective. And so that's an actual real thing. There is perception of diversity through understanding the different ways in which we see the same thing. And coming into processing that is a very big thing. So we're not going to do that most of the time because we're filled with a lot of other stuff in our lives that are very overwhelming. So the idea of processing climate change as an example, unless it is on the forefront of your everyday work, is something that sits there going, that's a lot to process. But right now I'm dealing with my mom who is got, say, for instance, an illness like autoimmune, and I'm struggling to help her because the government says that you can't put CBD oil, an example. Like, that would be one person's reality. And then there's another person's reality that's dealing with the raw data of the loss of their father, and that's really overwhelming. Like, I think that this is maybe even the second part of this, is that digesting the nature of reality at the moment is so incredibly intense and so incredibly vast that you need to really, really come back to nurturing yourself and finding a place in your life that can slowly and progressively be supportive of your cognitive process, your ability to translate the intensity of such chaos that is occurring for you right now, and slowly but surely engaging in it in a way where you don't detach from it consistently because it's so overwhelming. And that comes back down to sharpening the senses and coming back down to choosing why the blender, for instance, or the juicer, for somebody that's going to sell, like, be of service to the community or service to people where they're selling juices, they're going to choose something that has a lot more like functionality, that stronger components. And so we need to strengthen our components. We need to strengthen our senses. And practical ways that we can do that is, for instance, spending at least 10 minutes a day without any distractions around you, focusing on the nature of reality and just feeling. And progressively over a period of time, as an example, this is one thing that I do. And again, this is just my own, like, sort of 2 cents. I'm not saying that this is the truth or this is what you have to do or it's magically heal you. It's what I do is I kind of actively engage in just seeing reality as it is in this moment and not letting my mind go into places and stories, but just seeing it. So it's almost like a kind of Vipassana approach, just observing that and practicing sharpening the senses so that the ability to process the complexity of this becomes easier in some sense. It's like sharpening that and giving yourself the ability to really work through those things in that way. Because there's a tremendous amount of material that's existing at the moment that is so vast, and we're dealing with our own soul's realities. And I think that's why astrologers, at the example, can be so helpful to people in some senses, because we kind of have a little bit of a roadmap that helps us observe and objectify the context of what we're dealing with. And in that sense, help us compartmentalize things in a way that we can chew on and progressively digest, so that we can feel more, we can move through it, versus the things just becoming so overwhelming and then disconnecting eventually. And I think that that's what the key to this period of time right now is, the ability to progressively start using the high-end blender / juicer in being able to deal with the raw data that's coming through to the surface, so that we don't eventually just get into the state of complete, like, disassociation. And then that leads to forming ideologies, and because the ego needs security, and so it forms groups and allegiances with people that validate the same thing, but really there's still superficiality held within that experience. So something to contemplate, I suppose, in terms of today's conversation, or at least digesting your soul's reality. I hope that gives you something of value. I'm really, curious to hear what your comments are and what your thoughts are about this. Okay. All right, my friends. Thanks so much for listening to me talk over here, and have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.